Okay, so my name's Dan and we're here on the digigrid booth at AES. We're going to have a little look at how we integrate Pro Tools and the digigrid system, talking about both native systems and the Pro Tools HD solutions that we have, the DLS and the DLI. They actually operate in terms of the integration in the same way. So we'll look at the native system and I'll explain to you where the differences might be between the HD one and the native system. So basically there are two components to this. Within Pro Tools we're going to run our Studio app plugin, and this is much more like an application in itself. It houses, a bit like multi-rack, a chain of plugins, but gives us control of some of those network functions that we need once we went to DLS or an iOS-based system. And then the other part of that is the Sandbridge Studio. And this is a controlling application that contains the controls for the network, the hardware controls, and the other bits and pieces we need to control the network. What I have here is a Mac running Pro Tools native, and then connected to it I've got some digigrid processing hardware. And the way this operates is actually the same with an HD-based system and a native-based system. So let's have a look at what we have. The controlling application comes as two parts. We have a plugin, the Studio app plugin, that happens within Pro Tools. And this allows you to build your processing chain and manage within your Pro Tools, your workflow environment, all of the plugin processing. What we don't want is you to leave your native or your HD DAW and have to change the way you work. That would defeat, the purpose of what we're trying to do. So once this is set up, actually you can stay within Pro Tools. There is another application, which is the Sandbridge Studio, which allows you to manage and control some of these network functions and set up the network. So let's have a little look at that first. This is the Sandbridge Studio, and we're in the Setup tab here. And this allows me to manage my connected hardware. Actually, what we have here is a DLS connected, which appears as two parts. There's the DLI component, that's the Pro Tools interface part of it. And then over here we have essentially the server part of the Sandbridge Studio, of the DLS, and that's for the processing element. If I take here the DLI and open up the control panel, we'll just wait for this to load. This allows me to control the functions within the DLI. For example, down here on DLI port 1, I have an HD Omni connected. So here within this I can control the hardware functions of my Avid hardware. So from a user's point of view, they haven't got to worry about the lack of control within the Pro Tools environment, because our own control panel allows us to set up here. If I go to my analog out, for example, I can say the jack outputs need to follow my main output, and then we can hear it out of our system here. But these are the same controls you would get within your Pro Tools environment, and once it's set, we don't have to worry about it. We have the basic system info and the other sort of clocking components of your system. Of course, this is network based, so we need to be able to control the hardware and maybe have sync over Ethernet or have a digital sync from one of our Avid boxes. So we have a complete control panel for that. So that's the setup pad. The left hand side here on bank A relates to hardware on the network. So these are physical interfaces, and because it's network based, actually your Pro Tools system, whether it be a native system or an HD system, can appear on the network with other Pro Tools systems, which actually means in larger environments, maybe in a post studio or broadcast environment, you don't have to worry about other connections between systems. You can have a direct live link, a bidirectional audio link across the network while still running in Pro Tools. So it's a really powerful system to be able to network your Pro Tools systems together using the Soundgrid network. This system allows you to connect up to 4 servers. The servers are dedicated per workstation, but they can all be identified on the network. And then the control section over here will allow for hardware controllers. That might be MIDI-based controllers, or in the future, actually, iPad-style, wireless tablet controllers for the Soundgrid network. And we have the basic sample rate and buffer settings that we have on our network as well. The patch tab gives me a cross-point router for my entire network. So we have the ability to take audio maybe coming in from a 192 on an HD rig and share it between multiple HD systems across our network. And again, route through either the physical devices, the drivers that appear on the networks, this is other Pro Tools systems, and then routing the outputs as well from Pro Tools systems to physical outputs in our mixer, and device-to-device routing. So really powerful, flexible cross-point router for every device on the network. And then the final section actually is a little 16-channel mixer with aux sends. We use this in the native environment to do the headphone mixers. The system automatically takes the aux outputs and sends them to the headphone outputs on the native systems. And then within the Studio app plugin in Pro Tools, we can dial in these aux sends. So we're building our monitor mixers in Pro Tools, which is actually remote controlling this entire mixer in the background. If users actually need more information, more plugins on their mixers, actually within here, we can insert Waves plugins and other third-party SoundGrid plugins directly onto the auxes. So you might build an aux mix and then actually provide the artist directly with low latency additional processing directly in this mixer. I mean, they're for the power user. It's not necessary, you don't have to do it, but at least you have the option. So that's the setup program. Once it's set, actually in your normal workflow, you don't need to come and mess with this. It's just there all the time. If we go to Pro Tools, over here on my drums, I have a Studio app plugin. So if I open this up, this is a little application all in itself. A chain of up to 8 plugins. So rather than having to use multiple inserts within Pro Tools to build a chain of processing, actually with the SoundGrid, you can build one chain of processing within a single plugin environment. So here we've got a C4, maybe some reverb and some EQ, all built into one plugin. We have various hotkeys that we can assign for individual controls. And up here we have the ability to monitor the functions of the SoundGrid server. You know, we have in the background, we have this server processing, and it will tell us the usage, how much of this server we're using at any one time. But you don't need to come here to do it. Within the Pro Tools environment, it gives us accurate indication of how much of our DSP we're using. One of the advantages for a native user we have is that a lot of users now run on laptops, and this is a great addition to a laptop system. But actually then, if you go and jump on an aeroplane and you want to open your mix and play with it, you can open all of these plugins in a native environment without changing anything. So over here, this toggle function, we're currently processing these plugins using our SoundGrid server. If I toggle this to local mode, the processing stays exactly the same, but I'm now using the host processor of the computer. If you send the session to someone who doesn't have it, of course they can run it locally, or they can download this Studio app plugin free from Waves and open up in exactly the same way. So we're able to toggle the processing for a single plugin chain between the SoundGrid server externally on the network or the host computer. So and then all of the other controls, the automation and all of those other things that you'd expect to find are within your Pro Tools environment. You don't have to manage automation and automated settings externally. So that gives you a little run through of what we do on this. This interface is going to be the same for HD users. Of course, in the HD users, Pro Tools is low latency anyway, has the DSP to do monitor mixes. You don't need to worry about that. But for the native user, you do. How do we do this? Actually within here, and this is a native user function only, the monitor sends allows us to build these individual mixers for the headphone outputs. I explained that these automatically get routed to the headphone outputs within the patch bay. So actually, all we need to do is to put it into record mode, and then it automatically does a low latency mix direct to the artist's ears, and then we have the ability to adjust their individual levels for the individual artists. So all in all, it's a really complete solution. It differs from the competition because if you look at what they do, they need to go to other applications to make these mixes and to manage it. This Studio app plugin allows us to manage the entire thing in a single place. So there you have it. That's a quick rundown of what we're doing in digigrid land here at AES, and I hope to see you all later in the year at Interbeat. Thanks very much.